It was said to be a test of the political power of the Me Too movement, the campaign to recall Judge Aaron Persky for his supposedly lenient sentence in the Brock Turner Stanford University sexual assault trial. Now, Persky has been removed from the bench and replaced by a woman, and it's my subject on today's Fiamingo File. Janice Fiamingo of the University of Ottawa. A writer for the independent newspaper called the June 5th recall vote for Santa Clara County Judge Aaron Persky, quote, an enormous victory for women's rights, end quote. And she said she hoped that as a result, more judges will, quote, follow their hearts and use the power of the bench to help create a society in which we can all feel safe, end quote. All that is, except any man accused of sexual assault. It doesn't seem to occur to the writer of the article that the first and only duty of a judge is to uphold the rule of law, not to attempt to implement a political vision. But in the world many feminists are bringing about, every judge who sentences a man in a sexual assault case will have to look over his shoulder. The recall of Judge Persky is apparently the first of its kind in over 80 years, though it's perhaps not the last. It was led by a feminist sociologist and professor of law at Stanford University named Michelle Dauber, who is reputedly a close family friend of the complainant and someone who, protected by academic tenure and presumably a strong supporter of it, never has to worry about the popularity or lack thereof of her ideas and actions. Her website boasts of her active involvement in bringing college and university policies into compliance with Title IX, the crazed federal law, now under review, that has created so much misery and unfairness for college males in cases of sexual assault allegations. Her well-organized campaign to take down Judge Persky amassed over $1 million in financial backing and resulted in a vote with close to 60% in favor of the recall, all in a society that supposedly condones sexual violence against women. For his failure to implement feminist sentencing principles, Persky's career is effectively over. He's not only lost the position as judge that he filled without scandal for 15 years, but he has had his pension taken away and his chances of future employment severely diminished. He'll be remembered probably for the rest of his life as the biased patriarch who cared more about a privileged white swimming champion than the poor, vulnerable girl who was assaulted. It's a good bet that very few who contributed money and voted for the recall have actually waded through the court case documents in the Brock Turner sexual assault trial, which tell a very different story from what is regularly reported about the early morning hours of January 18th, 2015, when Brock Turner and the passed-out woman were discovered at about 1 a.m. outside a Stanford University fraternity house, though most commentators state as fact that Turner, quote, sexually assaulted an unconscious woman, end quote. This is actually an interpretation only. The accuser herself claims not to remember anything about this event, and the two so-called witnesses actually saw very little. Ultimately, it is simply not possible to say with reasonable certainty whether Turner took advantage of an obviously incapacitated woman in order to assault her, which I admit is possible, or whether those two young people, both under the influence of a lot of alcohol, went together consensually to make out and fell to the ground in their drunken state. I encourage everyone who cares about the truth to read all the documents which are available online. The little that we know for sure is that the woman in this case spoke to her boyfriend on the phone just minutes before the incident in question. She spoke to him For 10 minutes, according to police records, from about 18 minutes after midnight, well, not about, precisely 18 minutes after midnight, to 12:28, though she didn't remember speaking to him after the fact. Her failure of memory raises the possibility that during the period encompassing the alleged assault, she was not passed out, but quote, blacked out. In other words, functional, partying and talking and not appearing particularly incapacitated, in which case Turner could not have been expected to know that she was legally incapable of consenting, and in which case she wouldn't remember whether she consented or not. No one saw her leave the frat party with Turner, so no one can say whether she went with him willingly or was taken by him in her helplessly intoxicated state. The two witnesses who came upon them at about 12:55 a.m. offer only a partial and, in my opinion, not particularly persuasive account, though everything hangs on their observations. They said they saw Turner and the woman on the ground in a dark location near the frat house as they rode by on their bicycles. It was not exactly the most reliable vantage point to provide objective testimony. Both reported that initially they thought Turner and the woman were having sex, and they didn't think much of that. Note, it was later established that Turner was fully clothed and never had sex with the woman, so the witnesses were in this instance mistaken in what they thought they saw. They claim that as they continued bicycling and looked again, it seemed to them that the girl wasn't moving, and this is what prompted them to stop bicycling and confront Turner. They yelled at him and chased him down when he, not that surprisingly, ran from them. The crucial issue that no one can answer with any certainty is whether the girl passed out between the time the cyclists first looked and thought everything seemed okay and when they looked again. Turner claims that the woman was rubbing his back with both hands and seemed to be enjoying herself, and that he never had any intention of trying to rape her. The high level of uncertainty regarding the accuser's behavior and level of consciousness are more than enough, in my opinion, to raise reasonable doubt. But we live in a culture in which we are constantly told that good people believe women when they claim to have been assaulted, and we tend to act on the principle that any incident that leaves a woman feeling vulnerable and violated must be avenged. So it's not surprising, therefore, that the jury found Turner guilty, and it was then the judge's role to sentence him. And Judge Persky followed sentencing guidelines, and he found that Turner had no prior convictions, had many outstanding character references, expressed what the judge believed to be genuine remorse, though not acceptance of guilt, was under the influence of alcohol at the time, had already had his life irreparably damaged by extensive and vicious media attention and the loss of his swimming career, and would be severely affected, unreasonably so, the judge felt, by the 6-year prison term that the prosecution team recommended. For all these reasons, Judge Persky found that a sentence of 6 months in a county jail, followed by 3 years probation and lifetime registration as a sex offender, were appropriate. It's not exactly a picnic. An investigation by an independent commission found that Persky had done nothing wrong and he had shown no evidence of bias. But as we know, his sentencing decision wasn't good enough for the advocates of so-called women's rights. These advocates are outraged anytime a man is found not guilty of an allegation or is given what they consider to be a light sentence. These champions want all accusers to be believed and all accused to be harshly punished, especially if they are seen to be privileged white men, and even if what they've allegedly done is subject to reasonable doubt. These advocates want all men to live with the knowledge that they are just one accusation away from incarceration. They call on more women to come forward with accusations so that more men can be harshly punished and more men can live with the fear. This is their version of a society in which, quote, everyone can feel safe, since everyone refers in their minds only to women. The blow that the recall delivers to judicial impartiality probably can't be exaggerated. It's almost inevitable that the next judge ruling in a sexual assault case will think of Aaron Persky, and the next one, and the next. Knowing that the career you've built over years or decades hangs in the balance, wouldn't nearly anyone knowing that be tempted to err on the side of feminist harshness? And that's surely what the recall intended.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please support us on Patreon. If even half of our subscribers gave us $1 per month, we'd be well on our way to creating more and better content. And don't forget to subscribe to us on Studio Brule.